According to the data from IUCN, International Union of Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, it came out that 8.7 million species are present on our planet Earth. And just in the Indian system, there are 45,000 species of plants and 91,000 species of animals. Now the point is, when we are asked to study these species, it is really difficult to understand them without the presence of a system which would help us to understand some methods on how to identify and categorize these different types of species. So to escape all the confusion and to study the circle of diversity, biologists created an interesting system called taxonomy. Let us now study about taxonomy. How about understanding this concept of taxonomy with an interesting story? So, let me paint a picture for you to understand taxonomy in a better way. Imagine that a man traveled back in time to see the world. Amazing, right? He traveled centuries back and the world was an entirely different place back then. It wasn't like a world of gadgets and technology, but filled with a big variety of plants and animals, or flora and fauna in our technical terms. Since he was so amazed by what he sees, he wishes to remember everything he saw in order to share it with the world. Similar was the condition with the biologists in history. Just like that man, they started developing a system to identify and characterize these different species of flora and fauna so that the young future biologists like you and the entire world would follow a single system. So the man tried to identify what he was looking at while strolling. For example, he saw some things moving like animals and some things standing like plants. Looking at the variety of organisms around him with the different characteristics such as their shapes, color, size, habitat, behavior, types of reproduction taking place in them, and what they eat, prompted him to name them for the sake of convenience in remembering them. Just to help you understand how he classified the species, when he looked at a group of similar looking animals and plants, he curiously classified them based on their shape and size. For example, small cats and big cats, which he later classified as tigers. Who knows, he might have been one of the taxonomists to spread his observations. According to what we understand from that man's observation, taxonomy is a branch of science that deals with principles and procedures of identification, nomenclature, and classification of various species. So the word taxonomy is derived from a Greek word taxis, meaning arrangement or division, and nomos, meaning method. Hence, taxonomy is the method of arranging organisms into groups according to their characteristics. How can we forget the reason behind this whole mess? Just joking. The man behind this genius concept, Carolus Linnaeus. Yes, Carolus Linnaeus is considered as the father of taxonomy. He developed the procedure to identify, name, and organize species, which is known as binomial nomenclature. And he also classified all the organisms into kingdom Plantae and kingdom Animalia. Now let us understand the principles of taxonomy. Starting with the first principle of taxonomy, that's identification. It is the recognition of essential characters of an organism. The procedure of nomenclature is based on identification of organisms. For example, when you see a green colored leaf, you identify it as a plant as it is a characteristic of a plant. So now let's decode the second principle of taxonomy, that is nomenclature. It simply means naming an organism. As we are aware that local names of plants and animals might be different for different regions in a country and creates confusion while communicating. For example, do you know that fish is called masa in Marathi and macha in Bengali, but we don't call it masa or macha commonly, right? We call it fish, which is easier to remember. So, it is necessary to standardize the naming of living organisms so that they are known by the same name. It is referred to as nomenclature. Or you can say nomenclature is a system of naming things, especially in science. Here is another example to demonstrate the point. Jellyfish, silverfish, and starfish are not true fishes, but we still refer to them as fish, which is confusing. To escape this confusion, scientific names are made representing a particular organism in every part of the world, like Scyphozoan for jellyfish, Lepisma saccharina for silverfish, and Asteroidea for starfish. According to their scientific names, they now represent different organism which is accepted in every part of the world. Moving on to the third principle of taxonomy, that's classification. The process of categorizing things based on their characteristics is known as classification. Here, organisms sharing similarities in their physical traits and capable of interbreeding are grouped together. The degree of apparent similarities and differences in the organisms are done under 7 levels of classification, which are kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species, about which you are going to study later in this chapter. With this, we come to an end of our video. Let's recap what all we learned. We started with why we need to study taxonomy. We learned about what we need to study under taxonomy, that is, identification, nomenclature, and classification. I hope you guys understood this topic. You can learn more about it in the notes and attempt the topic-wise and complete chapter-wise tests for the chapters on EduRev to prepare better for the exam and check whether you have actually understood the topic or not. All the best.